Hi, this is the demo video for FK Control Rig Bake Mode for our Sequence Baker tool inside of Unreal Engine. Before we get started, we want to make sure that you guys are aware of a bug in 5.6 and even in 5.7 currently as well, is that the Bake to FK Control Rig option is actually currently not working in the context of nested level sequences. So here we have an outer level sequence with a nested level sequence inside here. And if we do our default Bake to FK Control Rig here, you'll see that in the output log, you'll get this failed to generate compressed animation data for anim sequence. So because there is this bug that we have to deal with for the context of this demo, we're just going to be working with a non-nested level sequence example. All right, so going back to here, we have this non-nested level sequence example. So also before we get started, we just want to make sure that we are in the default state where we aren't disabling the post-process blueprint by default. And we'll see how that affects the next step here, next few steps here as well. So one of the cool features of this plugin is the ability to use Alt+Shift+B as the hotkey to quickly bake, so you don't have to look and fumble through the menus. So if we just press that really quick, you can see that we've baked down the FK control rig within the frame range that we've defined here between 0 and 57. If we want to, we have the option to also keep the current animation track as active here with the checkbox here. So normally, if you are baking to FK control rig, it will always disable the animation clip here. So rather than having to come back here and activate it every time over and over again, we have the option of just keeping it enabled for every subsequent bake. So you can see that it remains enabled here. And a lot of the times we want to keep this enabled in case there are things that the control rigs aren't driving, and we want the original animation clip to be driving those extraneous things, and then we have the control rig override anything else afterwards. So the second feature that we want to highlight is the disable post-process blueprint here as well. So similarly to anim sequence, if you don't have this checked off and you're continually baking, the keyframes will start to accumulate with the additional transforms on that the animation blueprint, post-process animation blueprint applies. So we'll see here if we have the post-process running and we don't have it checked off and we do continually bake, you'll see that the bones start to move out of place, similarly to what we were getting when we were baking with anim sequences. So to prevent this from happening, we generally want to disable our post-process blueprint before we actually bake. So rather than doing it this way, we want to uncheck this, or we want to recheck this. Now that if we bake, we'll see that every subsequent bake, we don't have that accumulated transform that the post-process animation blueprint is running. But we can see that it is still running, but it's just turning it off temporarily when we do each bake to FK control rig, which this helps you do. So you don't have to worry about checking and unchecking this before each bake. Just having this on will contextually add a new track so that it disables it right before each bake. So on top of that, similar to control rig, we also have the ability to trim the start and end sections. So if you are doing a standard bake, you'll see that the start and end ranges for the FK control rig is unbounded. So we have negative infinity and positive infinity that the control rig runs towards, right? And you can see that because we are using the standard bake and we didn't disable the post-process animation blueprint, we have the sharp elbows going on here as well. So this is usually undesired. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have the ability, we're going to toggle on the trim start section, trim end section, as well as the disable post-process blueprint here. And when we bake, you'll see that the shape is maintained. And we have, rather than unbounded negative infinity and positive infinity frame ranges, it's capped to the frame ranges of the bake range, which is between 0 and 57 in this example. So where is this really helpful is if we want to do a subset of frames for the bake. So let's say we mark out our selection here between 15 and 30. And let's say we delete this track here. And we're going to change our bake range to our selection frame between 15 and 30. Now, if we do a bake, you'll see that we have this seamless handoff of the animation that is driven purely by the animation clip. And then once it hits frame 15, it's purely driven by the FK control rig. And then after it leaves the range, it's being driven by the anim sequence again. So this is really efficient if you're trying to bake and edit some tiny small subset of frames rather than trying to bake the whole range, you can bake a subset of ranges, make your tweaks, and then export an anim sequence or however you want to work to quickly and iterate on only a subsection of frames that you're working with. In this next section, we're going to be covering the bake to all controls option inside of FK Control Rig, as well as talk a bit about masked baking in the context of FK Control Rigs. So if we uncheck the bake to all controls, we'll see that it will have the automatic selection from update from sequencer selection with the skeletal mesh here, which is going to be Manny here. So if we don't want this to auto update with the skeleton tree from Manny here, we can also uncheck this, and then we can replace it with any other skeleton if we wish to use a different skeleton's tree to build our control set here. But in this example, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to be using the same skeleton here. So we do want this enabled, and we do want it to switch to Manny here. So with this selection set here, now we have all the bones inside of Manny, and we do not have sockets at the moment. So we currently are only supporting bones, but we can, from here, we can select everything, including the pelvis. So we're going to go from pelvis all the way down to here, and we're just going to add this to our control set here. So you can see that because we are using bones here, if you mouse over it, it'll show you that the format is always going to be bone underscore caps lock control. And if you are importing a curve, it's going to be importing the curve with the uppercase underscore curve control. So now that we have this selection here, we actually have a list of select controls that the FK Control Rig is going to be using for our control set. And we can use this and keep this around for repeated use for the future by adding it to a new group. So we're going to hit this, and we're going to call this upper body FK group. That's an example. And we're just going to scroll down here, and we're going to hit save. And now we have an upper body group. So if we accidentally deleted this, or if we were changing different groups and we needed to bring this back, we can just make sure we're in the groups tab, select our saved group, and click the button here, and it will bring the group back into our included control list here. So with this created now, we can do a bake with only including these controls. So you can see here, we're just going to keep this remove excluded control channels checked. And if we do a bake now, you'll see that our bake here only includes the controls of the set that we chose here. And we do not have any curves or any of the extra lower body bones. All right, so if we take a look at their animation now, we can see that we have the hip pelvis moving, but the legs are not moving, and we have the upper body from the run animation. So similarly, if we wanted to, we can preserve the controls by not removing the control channels in our base layer. So if we did a bake here now as well, we'll have a similar animation result here, but we do have the channels available for everything else. So to keep this more similar to our control rig scenario, we're just going to remove our pelvis as part of the example here. So if we remove the pelvis, this should look a lot closer to our example that we had when we were baking to control rig here with the upper body animation. All right, so with this checked off, we have the ability to just do basic masking of our bake to FK control rig. But if we want to get more advanced, we're going to enable the mask feature here, and we're going to start playing with masked baking as well. So similar to the control rig scenario, we're going to use just one animation clip, and we're going to make sure we select it, and we're going to split our mask tracks with our remove excluded control channels here. So with this bake, now we'll have two FK control rig tracks going on here. And you'll see that we have both the upper body as running here, as well as the lower body here. So similarly to control rig, I'm also scrubbing outside of the active zone for the control rig for it to reset and for it to run back with the proper settings for the visual settings to look correct. All right, and then on top of this, we can start mixing and matching different animation clips for upper and lower body now. So if we come into here and we go to our stash real quick, we're going to do the similar example by switching to our jump animation. Just going to give it a sec to load. And we're going to come to here, select our track here. We're going to add a jump to the start frame, and we're going to extend it to frame 57 as a similar example here. And to keep these two distinct, we're going to rename our track here first animation, and we're going to hit refresh here so that we can distinctively choose which animation track we want to apply the mask to first. So having this upper body control set in our include here, and we have our animation track here, we can do a contextual bake that will take the upper body for the first animation and the lower body for the jump animation. So if we come here, we hit bake. Now we have an FK control rig with the upper and lower body separately split. So if we take a look at each of them individually, we have our jump, which is only on the lower body, and we have our run, which is only on the upper body. And then we have these both running together. We'll have a jumping run animation that's baked contextually and filtered out with the control set here from our two animation clips above here. All right, and then on top of this, if we wanted to come back to our basic example here, we can also choose to exclude controls from our list here. So for example, if we do a refresh again real quick, we only have one animation track. And what we're going to do is we're not going to be masking. We're just going to be excluding controls from our bake zone. So for example, we can take our right arm. So we're going to go arm. And we're going to go here and we're going to take our upper arm, lower arm, and we're going to take our hand as well. So we can also do a search for hand, control click the hand. So make sure we have upper arm L, we have the arm and the hand, and we add this to our exclude control list here. So what this will do is we'll still have our upper body run animation, but we're going to be excluding the left hand from the bake here. So if we do a bake now, we'll have the arm, left arm not animated, but we still have the hand animated as well as the clavicle, but we just excluded the arm from the bake. So this is identical to what we get when we were using the include and exclude controls inside of regular control rig. And so we have feature parity essentially with mask making for FK control rig as well as standard control rigs. So just be aware that when you are working with an FK control rig, it's contextual to the skeleton rather than the control rig. So when we are building our control sets for our filter masks, they are requiring the suffix, which is underscore control, or the underscore curve control for the curves, if you are including curves in your bake. And our bakes, our groups for our FK control are separately stored here as well. All right, that covers all the features that we've added for the FK control rig bake mode. Thanks.